In the previous video I covered the first season of Invincible and went over the basic elements that help make it a great show. I also mentioned how I was going to cover the supporting cast in the next video. Well, here we are, and we're going over the supporting cast of Invincible. I won't be going over every single one as there's a few that don't really have anything substantial or noteworthy to talk about, but I'll at least try to cover characters that are important to the story, or Mark's development. And what better place to start than at the bottom of the barrel? Amber is awful. Like just straight up awful. At first she seemed okay. A way for Mark to learn about the importance of time management and deciding what's more important now that he has the responsibilities of a superhero. But after a while, her attitude comes across as very degrading. Nothing interesting happens between her and Mark, and it just amounts to the usual cliches like how he's late for something and it annoys her, and he doesn't know how to tell her his secret identity, and they don't even have any standout chemistry while they're dating. But then in episodes 5 through 7, she just becomes the most obnoxious and self-absorbed person. At first I was willing to let it go and give her a chance because she just doesn't know Mark is a superhero, but then she goes, "Oh, I figured it out weeks ago," and she still throws Mark under the bus. After this scene, I immediately stopped tolerating her because she's being so entitled and snotty to Mark and treating him like he's in the wrong. She's actively playing the victim here. This bitch thought that being in time for dinner with her mom or some soup kitchen was more important than the fact that Mark was saving people's lives and literally got his organs crushed by an alien lion. And you might make the argument that, oh, he wasn't being honest with her, he should have told her he was invincible before. Except that it's a freaking secret identity. The show actually takes the time to explain why Mark revealing himself to Amber isn't that simple, and he needs to consider the long-term consequences. And you'll want to know what sets her off? The scene where he protects civilians while fighting the cyborg at the campus. Seriously, woman, what is your problem? He was literally protecting your ass and saving people from an immediate threat, and you already know he's invincible. Why are you giving him shit for ditching you when he literally did the exact opposite of that?
You got mad at Mark for saving his best friend's life who was about to die to some cyber robot, and then after Mark's dad got done stomping a mud hole in his ass, she came running back to him because, I don't know, because she felt bad because she literally just watched Mark and his dad box an entire city to death. There's only one place Amber belongs, and it's in a fucking garbage can.
And you wanna know what makes it worse? Remember that scene where the bully gives Mark her phone number? This shows that she was pursuing him. And it's heavily implied that she was only interested in him when she thought he was dating Eve. So pretty much from the start, she was only thinking about herself. Amber is such a lousy girlfriend and she has nothing else to her character that makes her interesting. And it's so annoying how they use her as bait for cheap and lazy drama with Mark. I don't even know why they got back together at the end, especially when it feels like they're just gonna break up again later. I hope when seasons 2 and 3 come around they give her a minimal amount of screen time and don't make a big deal out of her because she's such a waste of space. There's much more important things going on here, and the show thinks some melodrama with Mark and Amber was so important that it had to take up 3 episodes of content. Alright, I got that out of the way. Now let's talk about the other characters that are actually interesting. In terms of plot, Titan doesn't do that much. A thug who finds himself in a tough spot trying to support his family, but he doesn't want to do it anymore, so he asks Invincible for help taking down his boss. What makes his character interesting is that they don't necessarily make him a pure good guy. He's not above killing people and doing dirty work, but they also give him a moral compass allowing him to remain sympathetic. There's a scene where he threatens to drop a thug off a roof but then sees a picture of his daughter in his wallet. He lets him go, giving him more time to come up with the money when he's really just showing mercy since he sees the two have something in common. The scene where Titan shows Mark around the city and reveals his family to him is pretty well paced, and it gives him a more interesting perspective, actually bringing him down to the streets to see things from the perspective of everyday civilians. It helps him learn an important lesson about seeing the bigger picture, to not ignore a problem just because it seems too small for him. I like how they make him the new crime boss and set him up for an appearance in season 2, showing how he's meant to play a bigger role down the line. Maybe him and Mark will get more opportunities to work together, who knows? Rex is a lovable dick who always tries to show off and act superior to others, but he's written in a way that makes it fun to watch. I like how the show is able to portray him as being a punchable jerk while not making him a despicable person. He's not evil or careless, just egotistical. He goes through a legitimate arc about learning to have humility and take his responsibilities as a superhero more seriously, and they don't pull a 180 with his character to make it happen. He develops naturally over time as he tries to work out his relationship with other characters. He genuinely cares about his teammates, and while he's upset about Eve dumping him, he does seem to genuinely realize and accept the fact he messed up. Him being the first to volunteer to clean the bloodstain at the HQ after the new Guardians learn to work as a team really shows how he's matured over the course of the season. Rex is one of those characters you expect to hate going in, but you warm up to him after a while and even start to identify with him. I don't know how he managed to be more likable than Amber, but he found a way. I like how Rudy, or Robot, is initially characterized as alien to human interaction and conversation, spending his entire life in a pod and having to act through a machine. It's also interesting how he's honest with the new Guardians about his plan to clone himself while also not considering the realistic reaction they'd have to his plan. It's funny while also showing how he's not exactly in tune with how to socialize with people. But what makes his character interesting is how his humanity develops due to his relationship with Monster Girl. As he starts connecting with her, his human side begins to resurface, remembering how it feels to care about somebody on a personal level and not just because he's programmed to look over his teammates. Rudy connects with Monster Girl on a personal level because she understands how it feels to be stuck in a body you hate, and he wants to help her by showing she doesn't have to deal with that stress by herself. It's made very clear that she's unhappy with her situation because her powers actively prevent her from having a normal life. She can't be in a relationship with anyone due to her condition, and she also has to deal with being scrutinized by people like Rex for looking like a kid and not understanding her situation. There's also this one scene where Rudy is talking to his real body before he passes away, and it's actually a pretty sincere moment. With all the other characters disregarding Robot's ability to have emotions because, well, he's a robot, the talk between Rudy and the real Rudolph Connors is really poetic and pretty sad when you think about it. The real one was never able to have a normal life because of his condition, and now he's given a different version of himself to have a chance at something he never could. You can tell that he was really thinking about how great it would be to finally be human as he made peace with himself, even if he was just doing it for a copy. And the way Rudy expresses empathy for him and even offers to try and save him really shows how, in spite of being a clone and having the mindset of a robot, really shows how he's alive. By the end of this scene, Rudy has truly become a human being, saying goodbye to his original self in a way that shows that he no longer hates the life he had to lead. A man who wanted to change the world, but could only do so much because of his disfigured state. And now he finally has a chance to experience life, even if it's just in a clone body. He believed himself to be an empty shell because he spent his whole life acting as a machine, when in reality he was actually more human than he thought. Rudy has a sincere story throughout this first season, and you feel like he deserves to be happy. And I'm sure they'll be able to find a way to do that for him in future seasons, unless they fully go through what happens in the comics. The Muller twins are really fun characters to spend time with. The banter between them is pretty entertaining, and the subtext to their relationship regarding how they interact as clones of each other has a pretty interesting perspective to it. They say their machine makes it so that neither one can tell who's the real one because they know they try to kill each other if they knew. It makes you think about the conversations they have and how steady their partnership actually is. Are they really as cooperative as they look, or are they secretly trying to backstab each other? It's pretty fun to think about given how humorous their personalities are. They even have moments of genuine empathy when they agree to help Rudy with his plan to clone himself. They expected Rudy to do what they did, but didn't expect the clone to accept that he was a copy of the original, and that the original was willing to let the clone be free of him rather than control him in some way. They have a very likable sense of charisma, acting like bickering partners who still stick together in spite of acting superior to each other. They even develop a few traits different from each other so you can tell them apart better, which makes them feel more unique as characters. These two were some of the most fun that I've had all season, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of them in the future. William plays a fairly minor role in the grand scheme of things. The usual buddy to the main character who tries to support and encourage him when he's feeling down. And while he's not a complex character, he does become a little more developed in the last few episodes, particularly in his relationship with Rick. It sounds and feels very natural, and their feelings for each other don't feel forced or in your face. It's also pretty heartbreaking seeing his reaction to Rick being turned into a deformed cyborg. Unlike Mark, he's a normal person being thrown into these extreme situations. Seeing him try to process what happened and ultimately breaking down with Mark hugging him trying to give him some form of comfort, that was some pretty heavy shit. There's also the part where he faces down Omni-Man without shitting himself in fear. It really shows how much balls he has considering he's still keeping it cool after the insane stuff that happened to him in the last episode. William gets a lot more interesting as the season goes on, and he provides some pretty good jokes that don't feel too awkward or cringy. He's cocky, he's funny, and he's the best bro that Mark can possibly have. Just find a way to turn Rick back to normal. This boy deserves to be happy. If it wasn't for Debbie, Eve would be my favorite female character in the show. She goes through a lot of her own shit with a life roughly as complicated as Mark's, yet she faces it with a determined and really upfront personality. Having a nasty breakup with Rex, dealing with her overbearing parents, trying to start a new life in the wild, and all while acting out as a mentor to Mark. It's great how they managed to put her character under so much pressure from so many different things going on, and yet she still takes the time to think of others and deal with her problems in a healthy way. When Rex comes to apologize, she accepts it while still making it clear that he blew his chance with her. her. She lets him down easy and they decide to remain friends. And they do it without making it overly dramatic and sappy. It's followed up by this really good moment where she checks up on Mark since she started developing feelings for him, but sees he's already in a relationship with Amber. But she doesn't throw a fit or tear up about missing her chance. She respects their relationship and congratulates Mark on being happy with someone, instead of resorting to some petty love triangle bullshit. Her support for Mark really comes into full swing in episode 5 after she receives the phone call about his fight with Battle Beast. She's really concerned for him and makes it clear that Amber isn't giving him the chance he deserves. And she doesn't say it to vilify Amber. She says it because she genuinely cares about Mark. Her dilemma with her parents is also rather interesting. They're not physically abusive and even seem to genuinely care about their daughter. They're aware of the dangers of being a superhero and the Guardians were recently murdered in graphic ways, so their concern for her safety is understandable. The problem stems from how they try to demonstrate too much control over her life while being ignorant of her feelings. Eva's right to feel trapped by the constant pressure her parents put on her because they're not seeing her side of things. They should consider being more sensitive with her with the crazy stuff she has to put up with. She also has an arc about having a fresh start in the wild while using her powers to benefit the world around her. It's a really clever way of showing how a superhero can save the world and make a difference without fighting monsters and villains. Restoring forests, protecting hikers from landslides, helping farmers grow their crops, just giving her help to people who need it. Eve isn't being a superhero, she's being a real hero, making the world a better place and just enjoying herself while doing it. The advice she gives to Mark throughout the season is also really good. She talks to him about the usual stuff a hero has to deal with. The violence, time management, maintaining a relationship, and through these conversations they grow to understand each other a lot. She comes across as really wise and experienced and is doing Mark a lot of good in helping him be prepared for the hardships of being a superhero. Overall, her development was excellent. She's smart, funny, supportive, encouraging, and a great role model. I don't get why Mark doesn't just date her, she's clearly better than Amber. And that's about it. Each supporting character of Invincible worth mentioning. It's pretty impressive to see the writing they were able to give to characters outside the Grayson family, with a few other characters having potential to be further expanded on in the future. In general, the writing for the show is really tight, and I look forward to seeing more. So far it's done a great job adapting the story of the original comics, and the people behind it have a strong passion and respect for the source material. With this team behind it, I'd say the future of the show is in good hands. Thanks again for watching. It's been a really good time going over the first season of Invincible, and I'll be sure to cover the next 2 seasons when they come out. Until then, feel free to follow the channel for future content. If you like what you saw here, feel free to check out my Patreon in the description. Every little bit helps and I always appreciate support from my content. Until next time, take care.